One of the most controversial political scandals in U.S. history, the Watergate scandal has made an impact on the 1970s and the relationship between the government and the people. First, here's what you should know about the 1970s. Nixon's reign in power was defined by political controversy, economic uncertainty, and social uproar, thus being a tough time to govern in the United States. During the 70s, the United States had still been at war in Vietnam. Desperate to save South Vietnam from the Communist North, Nixon increased his efforts in the war. In order to have a greater front, Nixon had sent more soldiers to Vietnam. Vietnamization and Rolling Thunder had increased U.S. involvement in the war. Rolling Thunder, in particular, increased the amount of U.S. air raids over Vietnam. In response, the hippie movement had protested against the war. The hippie counterculture only created more tension between the government and the people. Eventually, Nixon was looking for re-election. The Democratic forerunner, George McGovern, was his opponent. In order to amp up his support, Nixon created the committee to re-elect the president. Because of Nixon's paranoia to win the election, he had assigned 5 men to bug the telephones and steal documents from the Democratic National Committee in the Watergate complex. June 17, 1972, 5 robbers were arrested directly at the Democratic National Committee in the Watergate complex. 2 men were later arrested for suspected involvement. These men were Bernard Baker, a realtor from Miami and former CIA operative; Virgilio Gonzalez, a locksmith from Miami, refugee from Cuba following Castro's takeover; Gordon Liddy, counsel to finance the committee to re-elect the president, former FBI agent; Eugenio Martinez, a real estate agent that had CIA connections; Frank Sturgis, another real estate agent with CIA connections. Then, James W. McCord, security coordinator for the Republican Committee and Re-election Committee, former FBI and CIA agent. Next, Howard Hunt, White House consultant and CIA employee, writer of many espionage novels. Panic of exposure, Nixon provided significant amounts of hush money to the burglars in order to keep them out. 5 of the 7 accepted the deal. 2 went to trial: James McCord and Howard Hunt. In order to cover his tracks, Nixon addressed the nation about his suspected involvement in the scandal. A phone number for the White House was found among the belongings of the burglars. While in trial, throwing the president completely under the bus, John Dean, a member of Nixon's cabinet, had completely exposed the president's involvement and mentioned the recorded Oval Office conversations Nixon had. Desperately avoiding compliance to hand over the tapes, Nixon was in a fix. The longer it took to give the tapes, the more guilty he looked in the eyes of the public. Offering alternatives such as the Stennis Compromise, Nixon tried his best to keep the tapes away from the public. Wanting more from Nixon, Archibald Cox refused the compromise and hounded Nixon for the tapes. Archibald Cox was the assigned special prosecutor of the case. After pressuring Nixon, Cox was relieved from his position along with others that didn't comply with the president's orders. This event occurred Saturday, October 20th, 1973, known as the Saturday Night Massacre. The Saturday Night Massacre rose eyebrows. As Nixon's actions became more and more radical, impeachment became part of the conversation. With this in mind, the president's dilly-dalliness came to an end. The president finally handed over the recorded Oval Office conversations. His involvement was clear. The president had violated the privacy of the Democratic National Committee, lied under oath, and fired officials who researched his case. Despite Nixon's compliance to hand over the tapes, impeachment was inevitable. By August 8th, the president had willingly resigned. Pardoned of his wrongdoings by Gerald Ford, Nixon resigned with only damage to his image and relationship with the public. The scandal developed a greater mistrust in the government by the people. By lying under oath, Nixon had damaged his reputation as president, which rose questions about how many other times he had lied as president. All in all, the Watergate scandal only questioned the power of the president and highlighted major flaws in our government, such as the lack of supervision over the executive branch.
The country. I let down our system of government, dreams of all those young people that ought to get into government that will think it's all too corrupt and the rest. Most of all, I let down an opportunity that I would have had for 2.5 more years to proceed on great projects and programs for building a lasting peace.